"Put the bag down, sir, and keep your hands where I can see them." The command cut through the quiet October evening just as red and blue light swept across the maple trees on Hawthorne Lane. I stopped 3 houses from my own driveway with a brown grocery bag tucked against my side and my daughter Sophie's jacket folded over my arm. The air smelled like fallen leaves, warm pavement, and the rotisserie chicken I had bought for dinner. I lowered the bag slowly. The paper scraped against concrete. A bright orange slipped over the edge, bounced once, then rolled toward the curb beneath the pulsing reflection of a patrol car. Across from me stood 2 uniformed officers, Ethan Walker and Carlos Ramirez, both watching carefully while their body cameras blinked red. Behind them, beside a spotless white Lexus, Linda Harrington held her phone upright and recorded everything with the satisfied expression of someone who believed the evening had finally proven her right. "That is him," she said. "That is the man I reported." Officer Walker glanced toward her. "Ma'am, please stay behind us." Linda took half a step back, but kept filming. "He has been wandering through the neighborhood looking at houses. I told him to leave, and he refused." I looked at Walker. "My name is Marcus Reed. I live at 418 Hawthorne Lane." Linda gave a sharp little laugh. "He keeps saying that, but he is not in our resident directory." Walker studied me for a second. I kept my hands open and visible. My wallet was in my back pocket. My phone was inside my jacket, vibrating for what had to be the 4th time that evening. And beside that phone sat a leather credential case I had absolutely no intention of touching unless Walker asked me to. I could have changed the entire temperature of that sidewalk in seconds. I did not. "How long have you lived at that address?" Walker asked. 6 days. Linda immediately stepped into the silence. "Exactly. Nobody knows him." Ramirez looked toward her. "That is not unusual if someone just moved in." Her smile tightened. Porch lights were coming on around us now. Curtains shifted. Somewhere behind a fence, a sprinkler clicked rhythmically over a lawn. Linda raised her phone higher. She wanted an audience. She wanted a record. That part suited me just fine. "Mr. Reed," Walker said, "dispatch received a report that you were checking residences and possibly carrying property that did not belong to you." I looked down at Sophie's navy jacket. Her middle school mascot was stitched across the chest in gold thread. "That belongs to my daughter." Linda spoke again. "You cannot know that." I turned toward her. "Neither can you." For the first time, her expression flickered. Just slightly. Ramirez's radio crackled against his shoulder. My phone vibrated again. Deputy Chief Nathan Cole had been trying to reach me all evening about Monday morning, when the department planned to introduce me officially to the command staff. Walker had probably seen my appointment photograph. Ramirez almost certainly had too. Neither had connected it to the tired father standing under a maple tree carrying dinner home. Not yet. Linda looked directly into her phone camera and said, "This is why we have community standards." I watched the tiny red light on Walker's body camera continue blinking. She thought the police had arrived to prove that I did not belong on Hawthorne Lane. What she did not know was that, in less than 72 hours, these same officers were scheduled to stand in formation while I took command as their new chief. 20 minutes earlier, Hawthorne Lane had looked exactly like the reason I bought the house. Quiet sidewalks, maple leaves scraping over clean pavement, porch lights beginning to glow as daylight faded behind the rooftops. I had just stepped out of Patterson's Market with dinner tucked under my left arm when my phone vibrated inside my jacket. Deputy Chief Nathan Cole. 3rd call in less than an hour. I looked at the screen, smiled, and let it ring. Nathan was probably checking another detail for Monday morning. Seating arrangements. Department photographs. Maybe the order of introductions. Our new place was about 3/4 of a mile from the store, and my personal vehicle was still being transported from our previous city, so I walked. My phone vibrated again. "Nathan." I slipped it deeper into my pocket. Without answering. That was when I heard tires moving unusually slowly behind me. A white Lexus passed at maybe 10 miles per hour. The driver looked directly at me. I recognized Linda Harrington immediately. She had appeared at my front door on our second afternoon in Oak Ridge carrying a thick Homeowners Association folder against her chest. Sophie had been opening boxes behind me when Linda asked whether the homeowner was available. "You are speaking to him," I had said. Her smile had paused for half a second before returning. She gave me the folder, explained trash schedules and landscaping standards, then left. Now her Lexus traveled another 100 feet before stopping beside the curb. I kept walking. The engine hummed behind me again. She passed me a second time and stopped near the next intersection. This time her window came down. "Excuse me," she called. I stopped beneath a maple tree. "Can I help you?" Linda looked at my grocery bag, then my boots, then the houses behind me. "I was going to ask you the same thing." Her tone was polite, but her eyes were already searching for an answer she preferred. "Which property are you working at?" I shifted Sophie's jacket higher over my arm. "I am not working at a property." Linda tilted her head. "Then why are you walking through the neighborhood?" I looked past her white Lexus toward the street where my daughter was waiting for dinner. "Because I am walking home." She stared at me for a long second. Then she reached for her phone. Linda did not ask which house was mine. She did not ask my name. She simply raised her phone and aimed the camera at me as if my answer had created a problem instead of solving one. "I am documenting this interaction," she said. "For neighborhood security." "Documenting what?" I asked. "An unfamiliar person walking through a private community. This is a public street." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Oak Ridge Estates has community standards. Community standards do not change where I live." Linda tapped her screen with one thumb. "What address are you claiming?" Claiming. That word told me more than her expression did. 418 Hawthorne Lane. She looked down at her phone and scrolled. "There is no Marcus Reed listed at that address. We moved in 6 days ago. New homeowners are supposed to register their information with the association. Then your records have not been updated yet." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She stepped out of the Lexus, keeping the open door between us. "I know the families in this neighborhood. You met me 2 days ago." For half a second, she looked surprised that I remembered. Then she recovered. "I meet contractors, movers, landscapers, and service people every week." I glanced down at my grocery bag. "You asked whether the homeowner was available. I told you I was the homeowner." Linda lifted the phone higher. "I do not remember that." "I do." Linda looked toward the houses behind me. "Until your residency can be verified, I think you should leave." I almost laughed, but nothing about her expression suggested she was joking. "Leave where?" "The neighborhood. My daughter is waiting for me 3 blocks from here. Then someone can come get you." I studied her for a moment. 22 years in law enforcement had taught me the difference between confusion and commitment. Confused people ask questions. Linda had stopped asking questions. She had decided what I was, and now every fact had to fit that decision. Linda was not reporting what had happened anymore. She was arranging ordinary details until they sounded suspicious. I could have interrupted. I could have shown her the credential case inside my jacket and watched the entire conversation collapse. Instead, I stayed quiet. People who build stories from assumptions usually need only one thing to expose themselves: enough room to keep talking. "I am going home," I said. I started walking. Her Lexus door closed behind me. Seconds later, the engine moved alongside the curb at walking speed. Linda followed me for nearly 100 yards before lowering her window again. "I have contacted neighborhood security." "That is your choice. You are making this unnecessarily difficult." I stopped and looked at her. "I gave you my name. I gave you my address. You already met me at that address. What information are you still missing?" She stared at me, then raised her phone again. "I need to know why you were looking at houses." "Because houses are on both sides of the street." Her expression hardened. She drove ahead, stopped near the intersection, and began another call. This time I heard enough to recognize the rhythm immediately. She was speaking to emergency dispatch. "Yes, Oak Ridge Estates, Hawthorne Lane. There is a man walking slowly through the neighborhood and watching residences. He says he lives here, but I checked our directory and he is not listed." A pause. "No, I did not see him enter a house." Another pause. "He is carrying a bag and some clothing." I looked at Sophie's navy jacket over my arm. Linda ended the call and looked directly at me through the open window. "The police are coming." I adjusted the grocery bag against my side and continued toward home. Then I suppose we should wait for the facts. The patrol cars arrived before I reached the next intersection. No sirens, just red and blue lights suddenly moving across the maple trunks, white fences, and polished garage doors of Oak Ridge Estates. I stopped on the sidewalk before anyone asked me to. Linda pulled her Lexus to the curb about 40 feet ahead and stepped out immediately, phone already raised. Officer Ethan Walker approached from the first cruiser, while Carlos Ramirez came from the second. Both wore body cameras, tiny red indicators blinking against their uniforms. I recognized their names from transition reports I had reviewed earlier that week. but neither officer seemed to recognize me beneath the fading evening light. That was fine. I wanted them responding to the facts they had been given, not the title I would officially assume Monday morning. "Sir, please stay where you are and keep your hands visible," Walker said. Of course. I slowly lowered the grocery bag to the sidewalk and placed Sophie's jacket beside it. The paper crinkled. A carton shifted inside, and an orange slipped over the edge, bounced once, then rolled toward the curb. Linda pointed toward me. "That is him." I told dispatch he was watching houses. Walker turned slightly. "Ma'am, please give us some space while we speak with him." "I am the homeowners association president," she replied. "I made the call." "I understand. Please stay back for now." That bothered her. I could see it in the way her mouth tightened, but she stepped away. Walker faced me again. "Your name, sir?" "Marcus Reed." "Do you live in this neighborhood?" "Yes. 418, Hawthorne Lane." "How long have you lived there?" 6 days. Linda spoke from behind him. "He is not in our directory." Ramirez looked toward her. "We will speak with you separately, ma'am." Walker asked whether I had entered anyone's yard. "No." "Whether I had approached any homes?" "No." "Whether I had looked through windows or tried any doors?" "No." He nodded once, then glanced toward the groceries. "Where are you coming from?" "Patterson's Market." "On foot?" "Yes." "My vehicle has not arrived from our previous city yet." Linda interrupted again. He was moving slowly and looking around. Walker turned toward her. "Did you see him do anything besides walk on the sidewalk?" She hesitated. His behavior was unusual. What specifically was unusual? He was observing houses. Walker asked another question. "Did Mr. Reed threaten you?" "No." "Did he refuse to leave someone else's property?" "Not exactly." "Did you see him take anything?" Linda glanced towards Sophie's jacket. "I cannot verify where that came from." I looked at Walker. "That jacket belongs to my daughter." He nodded. "Understood." My phone vibrated inside my jacket again. Walker heard it. "Do you need to answer that?" "No. It can wait." Linda lifted her phone higher, trying to recover control of the moment. This is exactly why residents need to be vigilant. I watched the red light on Walker's body camera. "Officer, is your camera recording?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Please keep it running." Linda's expression changed. Only slightly, but I saw it. She had wanted a record when she believed the record would belong to her. Walker reached for his notebook. "Mr. Reed, I am going to verify your identification, then we can determine whether there is any reason for this contact to continue." I nodded. Behind him, Linda began explaining her version again, adding another detail, then another. I said nothing. The camera was running, the questions were getting more precise, and every sentence she added was giving the truth more room to breathe. Walker waited until Linda stopped talking before he addressed me again. "Mr. Reed, where is your identification?" "My wallet is in my right rear pocket." "All right." "Reach for it slowly." I nodded, moved one hand carefully behind me, and pulled out my wallet. The leather credential case inside my jacket stayed exactly where it was. I handed Walker my driver's license. He studied the card beneath the alternating red and blue light. 418, Hawthorne Lane. "That is correct." Linda stepped closer. "That property changed ownership recently." Walker looked toward her. "So you knew the house had been sold?" She hesitated. "I knew there was a transaction." "Did you know the new owner's name?" The association had not received updated registration. That was not my question. Linda lowered her phone slightly. "No." Walker handed my license to Ramirez, who walked back toward his cruiser to verify it. I could hear the radio inside the vehicle, low voices mixing with static. Linda folded one arm across her chest. "Even if he owns the house, that does not change the fact that his behavior concerned me." Walker opened his notebook. "Then let us be specific. Did you see Mr. Reed enter private property?" "No." "Did you see him try a door or gate?" "No." "Did you see him remove anything from a residence?" "No." "But the clothing he is carrying could have come from anywhere." I looked down at Sophie's jacket. Her school name and first name were embroidered across the chest. Walker noticed it too. "Did you ask him where the jacket came from?" Linda said nothing. "Did you ask him his name before calling the police?" Another pause. "I asked what he was doing here." "Did he tell you he lived here?" "He claimed he did." "And did you have information proving that claim was false?" Linda's phone finally dropped to her side. I checked the directory. Walker wrote something down. "A homeowners association directory is not proof that someone does not own or occupy a residence." My phone vibrated again. I ignored it. Then Ramirez returned from the cruiser with my license in his hand. He was walking more slowly than before. His eyes moved from the card to my face, then back to the card. I knew that look. Recognition trying to catch up with memory. He stopped beside Walker. Ethan. Walker glanced over. Ramirez handed him the license and leaned close enough to speak quietly. I could not hear the words, but I saw Walker's expression change. He looked at my name again. Then he looked directly at me. Behind them, Linda raised her phone, sensing a development she clearly believed would help her. Ramirez straightened his shoulders. Sir, may I ask you something? Go ahead. Are you Marcus Reed, the incoming chief? The street became very quiet. Even Linda stopped moving. I nodded once. Yes. Walker stared at me for half a second, then recognition settled across his face. Both officers straightened and gave a crisp professional salute. I returned it. Evening, gentlemen. Linda's phone slowly lowered. Chief, she whispered. She looked as though she expected me to announce that the matter was over. Walker seemed to expect the same thing. Chief, we can clear the call. No, I said. I pointed gently toward his body camera. Keep recording. Linda's face tightened. I looked at Walker. Finish the complaint exactly the way you started it. Verify every statement. Document every answer. Then I turned toward Linda. You wanted the police to determine what happened here. Her fingers closed around her silent phone. So let them. Linda looked from me to Walker, then toward the neighbors gathering on porches as if she were searching for a version of the evening she could still control. There is no reason to make this bigger than it is, she said. 5 minutes earlier, she had wanted everything documented. Now she wanted it finished. Walker kept his voice professional. Ma'am, I need to complete the information from your original complaint. Linda forced a smile. I was simply being cautious. Then we will document that. He asked whether she had personally seen me enter private property. No. Whether anyone had contacted her to report me. No. Whether I had threatened her. No. Whether I had refused a lawful instruction from an officer. No. Linda glanced at me. Chief Reed, surely you understand why residents have to watch out for one another. I understand community safety very well. Then you understand my intentions. Intentions are not the same as facts. She looked away. I crouched beside the grocery bag and carefully returned Sophie's jacket to my arm. Walker finished his notes and handed my license back. Chief, there is no indication that you committed any offense. You are free to continue home. Thank you. I slipped the license into my wallet. Please make sure the original dispatch audio and body camera recordings are preserved with the incident report. Linda's head snapped toward me. Why? Because they are part of the record. Are you planning to use your position against me? I met her eyes. No, I am doing the opposite. I turned to Walker. Because I am personally involved, I will have no role in reviewing this incident. Route everything through Deputy Chief Nathan Cole and the appropriate professional standards process. Walker nodded. Understood, Chief. She walked toward her Lexus without another word. I bent down to retrieve the orange near the curb. Before I reached it, Ramirez spoke quietly behind me. Chief, there is something you should probably know. I straightened. His expression had changed. What is it? Ramirez glanced toward the corner where Linda's Lexus had vanished. I have responded to this neighborhood before. All right. Calls from her. Walker looked over from his notebook. Ramirez continued. Delivery drivers, contractors, visitors, people she said were suspicious because she did not recognize them. How many calls? I asked. Ramirez shook his head slightly. I do not know the exact number. Enough that I recognized the address before I recognized you. I looked down Hawthorne Lane toward my house, where a warm porch light glowed 3 doors away. Until that moment, I had thought Linda had made one bad assumption about one new neighbor. Ramirez had just given me reason to wonder whether it was an assumption at all. My phone vibrated again. Nathan Cole. This time I answered. Nathan, I said, keeping my eyes on the empty corner. Monday morning, I need you to handle something before I take that office. Monday morning arrived with polished shoes, fresh coffee, and more handshakes than I could count. By 9 o'clock, I had officially taken command of the department. Photographs were taken beneath the city seal, introductions were made, and officers I had only known through personnel files finally became faces and voices. But before I sat behind the desk with my name on it, I met Nathan Cole in the hallway outside my office. Friday night, I said. I am completely out of it. Nathan nodded. Already arranged. The incident report dispatch audio, and camera recordings are preserved. Any review involving your contact will stay outside your chain of decision-making. Good. That was the last instruction I gave about my own case. If the truth needed my title to survive, then it was not much of a truth. 3 days later, Nathan returned carrying a gray folder. He closed my office door and placed it on the corner of my desk. "This is not about your complaint," he said. "Not directly. I left the folder where it was." Explain. Ramirez was right. There have been previous calls connected to Linda Harrington. Nathan had reviewed publicly documented incident records through the proper internal process, not because I ordered anyone to investigate Linda personally, but because repeated calls from the same location had raised a legitimate pattern concern. A delivery driver waiting beside a curb, a roofing contractor taking photographs before an estimate, a college student visiting his aunt on Cedar Court, a home health aide who parked briefly in front of the wrong mailbox while checking an address. "How far back?" I asked. "About 18 months in the records reviewed so far." I leaned back and listened to the air conditioner hum above us. "Keep me separated from it." "You are." Then something happened outside the department that neither Nathan nor I initiated. Linda sent an email to Oak Ridge Estates residents defending her actions from Friday night. She described the encounter as a routine safety concern and insisted she had always acted to protect property and residents. Thomas Bennett from Birch Court replied that Linda had questioned his nephew during a holiday visit. Maria Alvarez remembered Linda photographing her home health aide's vehicle. A contractor named Andre Collins still had timestamps from the afternoon Linda followed his work truck through the neighborhood while he was preparing a roofing estimate. More emails surfaced. More residents contacted the HOA board. One forwarded a message Linda had sent months earlier encouraging homeowners to report unfamiliar people who seemed out of place. Nathan gave me the simplest summary. The neighborhood is asking questions now. By Friday, the Oak Ridge board announced an independent review of Linda's conduct and the informal security practices she had encouraged. Sophie looked up from her notebook. "Is the woman from the white car in trouble?" I considered the question. People are checking whether she followed the rules. The same rules she kept talking about? I smiled slightly. Those are usually the ones worth checking. The following Monday, a notice appeared in my mailbox announcing an emergency HOA meeting for Tuesday night. At the bottom, one sentence caught my attention. The board would review resident complaints, written communications, and the recorded dispatch call from Hawthorne Lane. Linda had spent months deciding who looked suspicious enough to document. Now an entire neighborhood was preparing to examine the documents she had created herself. The Oak Ridge Estates clubhouse was built for 60 people, but by 7 o'clock Tuesday evening, nearly 90 residents had crowded inside. Folding chairs filled the aisles. People stood along the back wall holding printed emails, HOA notices, photographs, and folders thick enough to make the purpose of the meeting obvious. I took a chair near the rear in a gray jacket and civilian clothes. No uniform. No visible badge. I was there as Marcus Reed, homeowner at 418 Hawthorne Lane. Linda sat at the front table beneath the Oak Ridge Estates seal, wearing a cream blazer and the same polished expression she had worn when she followed me in her Lexus. Board Vice President Robert Hayes tapped the microphone. "We are here to review concerns regarding unauthorized security practices and repeated resident complaints." Linda leaned toward her microphone. "Everything I did was for community safety." Nobody applauded. Robert opened a folder. "Then the records should establish that." A small speaker sat on the table beside him. When he pressed a button, static filled the room. Then Linda's recorded voice came through. Calm. Certain. Familiar. She described a man walking slowly along Hawthorne Lane. She said he was watching houses. She said he claimed to live there, but was not listed in the HOA directory. Then came the sentence that changed the temperature in the room. "I know who belongs in this neighborhood, and I do not recognize this man." Robert stopped the recording. Linda stared at him. "That was taken out of context." "Then provide the context," he said. "What offense did you personally observe?" She hesitated. "I observed suspicious behavior." "What specific behavior?" Silence. A chair scraped behind me. Thomas Bennett stood holding a printed email. "You said almost the same thing about my nephew last December." Linda turned toward him. Before she could answer, Maria Alvarez rose from the second row. "You photographed my home health aide's car and demanded to know why she was parked outside my house." Then Andre Collins stepped away from the back wall with several time-stamped photographs from a roofing estimate. You followed my truck through this neighborhood for almost half a mile. One voice became three. Three became seven. Residents who had apparently believed their experiences were isolated began recognizing the same pattern in one another's stories. Printed emails moved toward the board table. Security notices followed. One message encouraged homeowners to report unfamiliar people who appeared out of place. Another instructed residents to photograph vehicles they did not recognize. Linda kept looking toward me. I understood why. She needed me to become the angry police chief. She needed this meeting to look like retaliation. I gave her nothing. I remained seated while the community spoke for itself. Finally, Robert opened the independent review findings. The board had concluded that Linda repeatedly exceeded her authority, represented personal security practices as official HOA policy, and encouraged reporting standards that had never been approved by the homeowners. Under the association's bylaws, the board voted to remove her from the presidency and appoint Robert as interim president until the scheduled election. Then Robert reached for the small brass nameplate in front of Linda and turned it face down. The soft click against the tabletop carried farther than I expected. Linda remained still for several seconds before gathering her papers. On her way toward the door, she stopped beside my chair. "You got what you wanted," she said quietly. I looked around the clubhouse at the residents still holding their records. "No," she frowned. "Then what was all this for?" I met her eyes. "You spent a long time deciding who deserved to explain themselves. Tonight, everybody finally got the same opportunity." She looked toward the crowded room, then walked away. I stayed seated as the meeting continued. The badge in my pocket had never come out. It had never needed to. The important part was not that the neighborhood finally knew my title. It was that everyone could now see how little that title should have mattered on the sidewalk. 3 weeks later, Sophie and I walked home from Patterson's Market beneath a sky the color of faded copper. Nothing about the evening was remarkable. That was what made it perfect. No flashing lights. No phones pointed in my direction. No questions about why I was walking on my own street. Oak Ridge Estates had changed in small ways since the meeting. Robert Hayes was serving as interim HOA president, and the board had suspended the informal security practices Linda had encouraged. Residents were told that future complaints needed to describe specific conduct rather than whether someone looked unfamiliar or out of place. The neighborhood had not magically become perfect. People still disagreed about fences, parking, trash cans, and lawns. But disagreement was different from deciding that one person had more right to belong than another. Linda still lived there. Her white Lexus occasionally sat in her driveway when I passed. I did not need an apology to enjoy my street. I needed the behavior to stop. Sophie nudged my arm. Was this where it happened? I followed her gaze toward the curb. Pretty close. Where you put the groceries down. Right about there. She smiled. And where your orange escaped? I laughed. You seem unusually concerned about that orange. It was innocent. So was I. She looked at me for a second, then laughed hard enough that she nearly tilted the grocery bag. We continued walking. Headlights appeared behind us, moving slowly down Hawthorne Lane. A patrol cruiser approached without emergency lights. Walker was driving. Ramirez sat beside him. As they passed, Walker gave me a simple nod through the windshield. Ramirez lifted 2 fingers from the dashboard in greeting. I returned the nod. Nothing more. Sophie watched the cruiser disappear around the corner. Dad, yes. Why did you let that woman keep talking that night? I took a sip of hot chocolate before answering. Because sometimes the truth needs room. You knew she was making things worse for herself? I knew the cameras were recording, and I knew the officers were asking the right questions. Sophie stepped over a crack in the sidewalk. But you could have shown your badge immediately. I could have. Why did you not? Because the badge should not decide whether somebody deserves dignity, I said. Sophie grew quiet. If she had treated me differently only because I was the new chief, then she would not have learned anything about how she treated the person she thought I was. We reached the storm drain where the orange had rolled that first night. It was gone now. Our porch light glowed 3 houses ahead, warm against the darkening street. Sophie shifted the grocery bag and started walking faster. Race you home. You are carrying the eggs. She immediately slowed down. I smiled and followed her. For 22 years, I had watched people confuse authority with control. Linda had made the same mistake. She thought authority meant deciding who belonged, who needed explaining, and whose word mattered most. I had learned something different. Real authority is measured by what you refuse to. Abuse. That evening, I did not need a salute, a badge, or a title. I was simply a father walking home with his daughter, and that should have been enough from the beginning. So tell me this. If you had been standing on that sidewalk in my place, would you have shown the badge immediately? Or would you have stayed quiet and let the cameras capture exactly how Linda treated someone she believed had no authority? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you enjoy stories where an HOA pushes too far and its own records expose the truth, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Because sometimes the strongest response is not raising your voice or flashing a title. Sometimes it is staying calm long enough for the truth to record itself.